So let's get started. Once again, my name is Ala Albaz. I work for Meirc Training and Consulting Company, and I'm presenting the Agile Project Management because we are adding actually this course to our portfolio in Meirc Training and Consulting. We're going to be offering this course actually this year. It's a new course, and it's actually I came up with it because the trend now in the project management currently, especially in the IT sector and other knowledge area, is by applying Agile, which is very different from the traditional project management that we are probably expert on. In general, I'm going to start with an introduction, and after the introduction, we go and talk about a few topics about Agile project management and Agile practices. In the beginning, I would like to introduce myself once again. My name is Ala Elbaz. I have a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from Kuwait University. I have also a master's degree in mechanical engineering from University of Jordan, and I have MBA from Wayne State University in Michigan. I am a certified PMP, and I actually also certified in Agile. I have Agile Certified Professional, PMI, ACP. I worked different places. Most of my career was in the United States. I worked for Ford Motor Company, General Motors, and Chrysler. And I worked also as a part-time lecturer in University of Phoenix and Baker College. Currently, I'm a partner with Meirc Training and Consulting here in Dubai. In my career, primarily I was working as a project manager, and that's what I'd like to share with you as well during my presentation. What are we going to talk about today? This is the agenda for today. We are going to start off with defining what do you mean by Agile, the terminologies. We are going to talk about core principles in Agile project management. We are going to talk about, again, core principle, main principles in Agile, what makes it so different. We're going to talk about a very important concept, which is a mindset of Agile. We are going to talk after that. We're going to talk about the starting point of Agile. We call it Agile Manifesto. We're going to compare between the Waterfall and the Agile methodology. In other terms, we're going to compare between the traditional project management and Agile project management. We're going to talk a little bit about product backlog, and finally, we're going to end off with talking about how to deliver the projects, usually Agile, by using incremental approach. So this is the agenda of today. Again, we're not going to cover, of course, in this webinar, every topic in Agile. It's a pretty big topic, but we're going to just have a flavor of the topic itself. We start off with the Agile project management. Agile project management is a value-driven approach. We focus in the Agile on the value itself. We try to deliver the value as soon as possible to the customer. We try to do that through steps. A lot of time we call it sprints or iterations. And in every iteration or every sprint, we try to deliver certain deliverables, or in other words, in IT, we call them features. So it is a process where you can manage this project in small chunk of works. Think about it, if you have like a big task, you divide this task into smaller chunks and you focus on delivering each chunk in each iteration, or a number of chunks in each iteration. Try to make sure to deliver that first. The question is which chunk or what part or which feature you would like to deliver first. It depends. The main idea in project management, in Agile project management, is deliver the feature that has the most value to the customer first. In other words, a lot of time we use this phrase which says, eat your cake first. So basically you try to deliver the most important feature to the customer so the customer can be actually start to appreciate what they have as soon as possible. Agile project management, it's a customer focus, as we're going to see later on. It's not only customer focus in terms of delivering to the customer, but also in engaging the customer in managing the project, or in performing the project. So the customer input in Agile is actually very involving. It's much more involving than what we see normally in the traditional project management. One of the main concepts, other than delivering the high priority or the high valuable product, is also focusing on the working software. So another topic we'd like to focus on here is to make sure to deliver to the customer a working software or a valuable software. In brief, from extremely high level, we see that the Agile project management focus on the following topic: delivering working software. Again, we're going to see that later actually when I show you other slides in a few minutes. Another important, extremely important concept in project management, in Agile project management, and that also make it a big difference between the Agile and the traditional. In traditional, we kind of resisting the change, or in probably lack of better term, probably, or in other aspects, we can say we try to control the change. In Agile, it's totally the opposite. We welcome change. We ask the customer for his input, and we have no problem at all in engaging any change that the customer think fit, or even the development team, if they think that they need to do some changes, we do welcome and embrace those changes in order to deliver the most valuable product or software to the customer. Another important topic we're going to see is in Agile is, which also make it a very different from the traditional one, is the team empowerment. In Agile project management, we recognize that the development team is the one who will deliver the software, not the project manager, not the management, not the sponsor. So the project manager role in the development part is really actually very limited. We're also going to talk about later on in a few slides about the fact that there is a new concept, we call it the servant leadership, which is basically the project manager has we call it servant leadership, not like in the traditional project management where the project manager have much more power than we are going to go. Another thing is, okay, another important, and we're going to talk about this in a few minutes, even in more detail. In Agile project management, also another big difference between the Agile and the traditional project management. In Agile, we focus on simplicity. We try to deliver, and that's actually a little bit of a weird concept. We try to deliver a the simplest possible product that can satisfy the customer's need. We try to avoid any kind of complications or complexity as much as we can. So whatever the customer looking for, we try to deliver it to him in the simplest form possible in order to get his approval. So this is a little bit about the Agile as a concept. Here, as we said, other probably core principles in Agile project management, as we said earlier, is welcoming change. Working in a small value-added increment. So as we said earlier, we take the project, we divide it up into small increments, features, if you will, and we do them over sprints, and we prioritize them according to their value. We use a very short, another big difference between this and the traditional project management. We like to use a kind of very short build and feedback loops. We call them again sprints or iteration. It depends on what method you are using. In Scrum, we use sprints, and in XP, we use iteration. In the Agile methodologies overall, is, as I said, a little bit different than traditional, where we plan first and then we deliver, and we go through sometimes few months in delivering. This one, we break it down to small chunk, we build, and we get a feedback right away, and then we continue to build some more and get feedback and go and so forth. And sometimes this loop can be anywhere between only 2 weeks to 4 weeks, sometimes even 1 week. So as I said earlier, it's a very shorter time than the traditional project management. We encourage discovery, we encourage creativity, we ask the development team to try new methods. We don't try to be conservative at all in Agile. We just learn from our mistakes, and that's why we find that Agile is very appropriate for the R&D and the technology, where we can probably test our knowledge there. It's a value-driven development. There's a lot of focus on the value. again, the feature that does not have value, probably we don't need even to develop them at all. Or if they have a little value, we probably bring them down to the bottom of our backlog, as we're going to see. So once we find out what are the features that we want to probably deliver to the customer, one of the major things that we need to do is to prioritize them and to deliver the highest value first, and then we leave, and we can keep reprioritization. So the prioritization is not static by any means. It's actually very interactive and very dynamic. One of the probably weird thing, if you will, we talk about, we encourage to a certain degree, we have a concept, we call it failing fast. Basically, if the project is not probably feasible or something, we'd rather the project to fail faster than later in order to save us resources and money, and which is very similar to the traditional. But the difference here is we do a lot of testing. Actually, one of the important concept in agile project management is excessive, or sometimes we call it aggressive testing. We'd rather to do testing, and we'd rather to see failure as soon as possible in order to fix it and go and move on. So instead of building on failures, on building on mistakes, we try to correct those mistakes before we move on. Continuous improvement and Kaizen, another important topic. We talk about it in agile project management. And one of the things that we see here, which can be also a little bit different in project management, for example, the topic of lessons learned. In traditional project management, we have the lessons learned usually towards the very end of the project, where we try to gather all the information that can help us to determine what went right and what went wrong. And then in order to be able to get these lessons and learn from it for future projects. In Agile, this is not truly the case. What we do is actually the opposite. We try after each iteration, every like 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 1 week even. After we finish and deliver that iteration, we usually go back and we do a lesson learned in order to learn from our lessons moving forward in the same project. We call those lessons learned, they have a term for that in Agile, we call it retrospective. So if you see the word retrospective, that's exactly what it means. And of course, we continuously deliver until the very end of the project. So the delivery comes from the very beginning of the project and ends at the very end of the project. Again, versus the traditional project management, where we have planning in the beginning and then delivering later on. So we find the research found out that agile project management is better suited, or best suited actually, for knowledge-based projects like IT. We can use them for other projects, but those are the ones that usually we see mostly in using agile. I did a small table here to show you the difference between traditional and agile project management. Again, the agile is what I think is the future of project management, especially in the knowledge-based industries and IT, especially for small and medium projects. Probably in the larger size project, probably I would go with the more traditional one. But if you have a smaller or medium-sized IT project, I think that probably would be better fit for that. In traditional project management, we focus on planning, while in agile project management, we focus a lot on customer interaction. So as I said earlier, the customer is a focal point here in terms of engagement. We engage the customer all the time, and we also deliver to the customer all the time. The customer who is responsible on actually prioritization of his feature. The customer tells me what he wants and what need to be delivered first. And we keep engaging him all the way from the very beginning of the project until the end of the project. In traditional project management, we don't see that as often. Actually, most of our interaction with the customer would be in the very beginning or in the very end, or in the very end. Another difference, as I said earlier, just to recap it, in traditional project management, we have the change. Usually, we use a lot of change management processes. In agile project management, we do not use these processes at all. We actually use backlog. And the backlog is our backbone in agile project management. This is the most important document for us, and this is a living document that can, we keep looking at it, and we keep refreshing it and updating it all the way from the beginning of the project until the very end of the project. In traditional project management, we do a lot of upfront planning, while in Agile, we do a lot of what we call it progressive elaboration. So we plan only for the very like short term. We do not really do a lot of planning for the long term. And as we move on, we keep going with the next phase, and we keep planning also for the shorter term. So we do not go normally do like the whole project, or even for 6 months time or anything. We just plan for weeks sometimes to know exactly what we need to be done. So instead of doing a lot of planning in the beginning, as we said, we do planning as we go throughout the project. That's another big difference between the two methodologies. Traditional is more top-down control, while in Agile, like in traditional project management, we see the project manager controls the project. He tells the development team what he's expecting. He does the planning for them. He gets engaged in a lot of technical details, while in the Agile project management is more the team self-organized, the team self-managed, the team do basically most of the work, and they decide how to do the work. So just in brief, just to make sure people understand that, the customer tells me what he wants. The team, will tell him how is it going to be done. The team is the knowledgeable party. The team is the one that is doing the actual work, and the team knows best how to do this job better than anybody else, better than the customer, and better than the project manager. Traditional project management, the delivery is based on the scope. So we define the scope of the project, and then we deliver accordingly. In Agile, we don't do that. The scope is very, very fluid, very dynamic. So we break down the project into small chunks, and as I said, sprints. And inside those sprints, the tasks themselves, we put them in what we call them time box. Time box is a unique concept in Agile, where we have a specific time box, and we try to do the task or perform the task within this time box. This time box cannot be extended. So when we're trying to work on a task or multiple tasks, if the time was not enough, then we stop working when the time is up, and we take the leftover from that task and we put it in the next sprint or the next time box. So this is a very different, extremely different from the traditional project management. Traditional project management normally is a contract oriented, while again, the Agile project management is more customer engaged and more customer oriented. Another important concept we see here in Agile project management is the idea of being Agile or doing Agile. Basically, if you read any reference about Agile project management, there is a lot of emphasis on thinking Agile, not just doing Agile. It's a big difference, and it is the right way to do it. You need to think about it. You're gonna encounter a lot of situations when you need to think about it. For example, one of the examples that a lot of people get a little bit surprised with, that we do not use like softwares or like Microsoft Project or Primavera to manage our Agile projects. We normally actually like to what we call it, like to use what we call it sometimes low-tech, low-tech, high-touch tools to deliver to use in order to manage it. So we do not have to use anything. Again, we like to use charts. We like to use something visual people can get in touch with, people can look at and understand exactly where we're going. Doesn't need to have a lot of planning and management like the traditional ones that we see in project management. So thinking Agile is a very big deal, and we try to focus on it all the time. That takes us to very beginning, how the Agile project management started. The official start of the project management, and a group of people gathered, and they issue what they call it Agile Manifesto. Agile Manifesto, they said it has 4 important pillars, that all the concepts and everything about Agile came from those four important pillars. The first important pillar is the individual and the interactions over processes and tools. So we value in the individuals, the people, the development team, the people overall that working on the project, and this is more important to put our, to invest in them, much more important for us than to watch and monitor and invest in processes and tools that can help me manage the project. The second concept is we need to focus on a working software, not documentation. And again, another huge difference between the two methodologies, the traditional and the agile. What I care about is to deliver to the customer a working software, not necessarily a ton of documentation. So there is actually kind of misunderstanding about that. Some people say that documentation is not important at all in Agile. That's probably not entirely true. We need to have documentation, but we like to also keep it to the minimum. Another important tool here is the customer collaboration is much more important for me than the contracts. As I said earlier, as I explained probably earlier, we encourage engaging with the customer all the time. Responding to change over following the plan. And I think I already explained that a few minutes ago. The four pillars, everything we see or we do, or all the concepts, all the tools, all the techniques that we use in general in Agile project management, really they come out from those four important concepts that we see all the time. Another thing I just want to touch on, a lot of people ask, can we use it for non-IT project? And the answer is yes, we can use it for non-IT project. In general, we can use it for smaller type of projects or medium probably sized projects. We can use them. I just put examples here, as you guys can probably see. If you want to move facility, if you need to do reorganization for your company, if you want to change your current business processes, those types of projects can be ideal actually for to be managed by using Agile methodology. This picture is probably one of my favorite. It shows the difference between the two methodologies very clearly. The first one, the traditional or waterfall, this is how we do it. We start taking piece by piece and we try to paint that piece little by little until the final product is complete. In Agile project management, no, we start doing a draft, and after the draft we get some feedback from the customer, and from that we keep adjusting it, and that's what we call reiteration maybe. Or reiterative approach until notice here the hand is up in her mouth and then it goes down and then the eyes are different, the hair is different, the color. You can keep getting feedback from the customer in order to the final product. But in general, each step of them is deliverable. It's not perfect, but it is deliverable. So the customer can even touch what are we talking about? So he understands, he can get more engaged because he knows what we're doing. He can relate to this. I think this is very important slide to show the difference between the two approaches. Another way to look at it is overall is the triple constraint. We all know as project managers the triple constraint in the traditional one, where is the feature or the scope, time, and cost. And we usually draw it this way. And we say always that normally we try to keep the scope fixed, and if the scope has changed, it will be affecting the time and the cost. So the time and the cost are usually can be variable, if you will. Can they change? But the main objective is to deliver the scope or the features exactly as the customer wanted. Again, in Agile is very different. The scope and the functionality can be very different, can change. It is changing. It doesn't have to be exactly, or it can change according to the customer, what the customer wants. While we keep the budget is fixed, and the time, as I explained earlier when I talked about the concept of the time box, we keep it fixed. Very different from the traditional approach. in Agile, we have another important concept here. We call it the Agile value proposition. We can also see the difference between the Agile and the non-Agile. For example, all the lines that shown in green, they show the Agile. For example, the visibility is all the way high, while in the traditional project management, normally the customer is engaged in the very end, the very beginning and the very end. Adaptability is usually much higher. Business value, we try to deliver business value as soon as possible versus as late as possible. Risk drops right away because once we get, remember we talked about the testing and the failure fast, so that's why the risk dropped significantly when we actually do Agile. Servant leadership. This is one of the actually hot topics. A lot of people usually ask questions about it. Is the role of the project manager change in Agile dramatically between the Agile and the traditional project management? The main role of the project manager will be shielding the team from interruption. If there is any interruption, people like, for example, nagging on them or keep putting some pressure on them or interrupt them to do other work. Basically, the project manager role is to put an end for that. Another thing is to remove any kind of problems or impediments to progress. If there is any problem, for example, people ask for a lot of documentation, you probably can't talk to them or something to communicate with them. You need to make sure the communication is valid, everybody's communicating smoothly, and you need to make sure that people understand the project overall vision, and you keep reiterating that. And finally, we talk about carrying food and water, not literally, but basically we're trying to tell that the project manager role is to provide all kind of administrative assistant, if you will, to the development team, which again, they are the one they're doing the project itself. Moving on, this is, as I said, I think if I want to focus on one area on how to manage the project, the Agile project, it would be the backlog. The backlog is the most important, the backbone, if you will, for Agile projects in planning and actually execution. It's a single deliverable, or it's a list. It can be, you can think about it as the scope. You can think about it as change management log. It's everything in one. It's single, visible, master list that basically have all the functionality and even the functional and non-functional work that need to be done. And it is sorted all the time by the priority. Whatever the most important, we need to put it on the top, and the least important, we'll put it in the down. And we pull from that list. Again, it's a one list. And we put all the features there, and we pull from that feature. The customer is involved in determining which one is high priority and which one is not. While as I said, the development team will take from that list and develop it according to the priority of that list and the order of that list. And always the priority is going from top to down, from the highest to the lowest. It's a planning tool, but also it's an execution tool. If, for example, this is a nice slide because it also shows you how dynamic is that list. If, for example, there is a new work showed up or a new feature that need to be done, then what do? Then we'll determine the priority of that feature and we'll insert it right in the backlog. We don't have to have change management. We don't need to have any kind of administrative work or routine work. There is nothing. You just put it in. What happens is we drop for example, in this way, in this particular slide, story 4 becomes 5, and story 5 becomes 6, and goes, and it will be reordered again. If we were supposed, with the current money that we have and the budget and with the time that we have, that we need to deliver those 9 stories or 9 features, if we include priority 4 or story number 4, the one shown in red, and we put it in the right place, that might push story 9 out of the picture. So what that means is story 9 might not be actually developed at all, because it's a very low priority. The customer doesn't really value it, and it's much more important for the customer with the current budget and the time frame that we have is to develop story number 4 versus number 9. This is how it works, and this is how flexible it is and how dynamic it is. Moving on, another thing is also people just want to make sure that people like understand this point as well. The agile is as I said earlier, mindset. There are methodologies. In order to apply agile, you need to basically adopt one of those methodologies, or maybe a combination of them, or you can come up with your own methodology. But in general, the main schools of agile methodologies, you can see them in the screen. Probably the most common one we see is Scrum. Scrum is probably the most important, or I don't want to use the word important, probably the most widespread, if you will, agile methodology. The second one is XP, or extreme programming. The rest of them is not as common, but we see them a lot of time. What we do is we borrow some concepts with them and we infuse them in other methodologies. So we have lean product development, Kanban, which are quality methodologies, along with FTD, DSDM, and other what we call the crystal family of methods. All those methodologies adhere to the Agile principles and the manifesto that I showed you earlier. In general, they all focus on people, they focus on communication and the flexibility of doing the job. Since Scrum and XP are the most probably common ones, then I need just to go through them very quickly. Agile Scrum, as I said earlier, is probably the most popular one. It's lightweight and it's very easy to understand. It's very flexible. A lot of organizations love it, and it's easier to be actually implemented. As I said earlier, we break down the scope or the product that you wanted to feature. Normally, we do it over iterations, time box iteration. We call them sprints. Normally, it calls for certain practices, such as we have what we call it daily scrums, which they are daily stand-up meeting. So it calls for example, we need on a daily basis, on the same time, every day. We do 15 minutes, and those 15 minutes are time box. You need to finish that in 15 minutes only. We call it stand-up meeting, and we basically ask certain questions and in order to get the latest update on the project. So basically what you've done from the question that we usually ask ourselves are three. What we've done since the last meeting, which is yesterday. What are we going to do today? Only today, not in the not the long term. And the last thing we're going to ask ourselves would be, is there any problem that we need to be aware of? We do not in those 15 minutes, we do not spend them on anything else, such as how to do things, how to develop, should I test? Or this is not the right forum for it. It's not for discussion. It's just quick update for the status of the project for the time being. That's it. And that's a very important concept. Normally we do it in the sprints, which again, the sprints can go from anywhere between 2 to 4 weeks. This is a nice graph that we can see that can summarize Scrum framework. So as I said, if you can see in the left, we have the product backlog. From this product backlog, we do have planning. We plan every sprint. As I said earlier, the planning is not done in the upfront. We do it throughout. So in every sprint, we do a planning meeting, and we determine the sprint backlog. The sprint backlog is a subset of the product backlog, which is the top features that we need that we need to develop in this particular sprint or Scrum. So what we do here is, again, we do go through the sprint, which is normally anywhere between 1 to 4 weeks. Once we're done, we have a finished work. We do a sprint review to make sure everything is good. If you guys look in the top, there is a daily stand-up meeting. Is done every day, and finally, religiously every day. And finally, we have after that what we call a sprint retrospective, which is the lesson learned. What did we learn from that sprint? What did we do right? What did we do wrong? And how can we avoid that problem going on in the future sprints? Scrum, normally there are 3 major roles. We have the development team and the product owner and the Scrum master. The development team is the team anywhere between 3 to 9 people who are the professionals, the IT technicians that they are developing the work itself. They are empowered, they self-manage, they are self-organized, and they're cross-functional. So everybody can do everybody's job. Another important concept in Agile, everybody can do everybody's job. There is nobody have, no one person in that team should do one thing at a time. So if somebody is off, if somebody is not there, I can do his job and he can do mine as well. We in Agile recognize that those are the people, the development team who does the actual work. So that's why there's a lot of importance on them. The other team, the other role will have the product owner, the customer. He's responsible on having the backlog and keeping that backlog prioritized and updated. It maximizes the value and provide also acceptance criteria. The Scrum Master, as I said earlier, it is Scrum Master. You can think of him as a project manager or a coach. He's responsible to ensure that the methodology is understood and used throughout the project. And as I said earlier, they follow what they call the servant leadership. We talked about daily Scrum, so I'm going to skip this slide. The other methodology that we see is actually very popular. It's XP. XP is focused, though, on software, more so than other IT areas. Scrum, as we said, as we probably noticed earlier, has a lot of project management level, while the XP focus more on the development of the software itself. So we can see a lot of things. I'm going to show you another slide in a couple of minutes. What do I mean by that? If you look at the programming process or the framework of the XP, very similar to the Scrum. You have user stories, and again, the user stories is your backlog. You have planning. They call it release planning in XP. If you go to the bottom, you can see spikes. Spikes are the testing that, when I talked about the aggressive testing in XP, they call them spike. There are two different types of spike. We have risk spike and architectural spike, just to make sure we understand the concept and, to fix any problems that we have. And then we have iteration, which is again around 2 weeks, 2 weeks plan, 2 weeks overall. We have a lot of concepts. We're going to talk about it in a minute here. And then finally, we got the output of the Scrum. Here are those are the XP practices. That's why we said it's focusing more on developing software. We're going to see a lot of maybe more technical words here. We have what we call it continuous integration. We use metaphor, pair programming, test TDD or test-driven development, collective ownerships, coding standard. There are 12 of those important concepts in XP, and those are really extremely helpful when it comes to developing software. I'm not going to go through each one of those terms, but this is to have, I'm going to just probably pick a couple. For pair programming, as I said, probably I mentioned that earlier, but pair programming is basically when we do an actual programming, usually we like to do them in both. One does the actual code, the other one we review the code at the same time. So if there's any mistake, they can be corrected. And vice versa, and then the other person start doing the code, and the other person will be looking at him to watch him and to review. So the reason we do that is two things. The first thing is to make sure there are no mistakes, and the other reasons, and it's a very important reason, is the teaching each other how to do that. So it's self-development as well. Another important factor, another important one, it's used beautifully actually in XP, is what we call it continuous integration. Every time we do a coding, right away the code will go and it will be tested instantly to make sure it's integrated in the overall code and there is no error and there is no problems over there here. So again, we're not going to go through the 12 concepts, but those are flavor of XP. As I said earlier, we deliver incrementally. So we deliver the functionality directly to production. We start by plain vanilla, which is very basic, and we build from there. We do testing and we deliver the most important value first. One of the last concepts I would just maybe the last concept I would like to talk about is what we call it MVP, or minimal viable product, which is the functionality of a project or the feature of the project that can be introduced as independent useful deliverables. So one of the first, if you will, the first releases of the software, which has the most basic element. It doesn't have to be all the bells and whistles. It just have the very, very basic. It's like what Pareto says, the 80-20 rule. It adheres to that very nicely. So in general, uh, that's usually our first release, which has the plain vanilla, the very base minimal. It can be reduced to it as independent deliverable, but it's again the bare minimum. To understand this concept, I'm going to have a quick quiz, and the quiz is, as you guys going to see, I'm going to give you maybe 2 minutes or even 1 minute just to see what is the right answer, and then we can discuss it in a minute, and that will be actually the last slide that we have. Which of the following is the most likely to be minimal viable product, MVP? A bicycle that has no handlebars. B, a pen that has a reservoir for glow-in-the-dark ink as well as a regular ink. C, an order entry system that has no user interface. Or D, a chair that has no back. If anybody got the answer, just probably type it in. That would be nice. Okay, we have B, B, D, D, B, and the right answer actually is D. Let's take a look here quickly. A bicycle has no handlebar. It's not functional, so you cannot deliver to the customer a bicycle that has no handlebar. A pen that has the reservoir for glow in the dark, that's too much. That's a lot of feature. That's not minimal. That's not your plain vanilla. You can do it just regular ink first, and then you can add the glow in the dark. An order system that has no user interface, cannot use it, cannot be used. And finally, a chair that has no back you can sit on, but again, this is just to have an idea about overall what do you mean by MVP, which is a very important concept in Agile project management. As we go from here, we can build feature, you can build the back, you can build maybe put leather, you can do whatever you want to do from there. This is actually the last slide. I know I didn't, it's a big topic. It cannot be done in half an hour or an hour. So I just want to give you a flavor. We have a training course in Agile and Meirc Training and Consulting that will be actually in the last quarter of this year. If you have any question, I'm going to stay here for another 5 minutes, maybe 3-4 minutes. And if you have any question, please type it in the chat room, and then I'm going to read the question and I'm going to answer it. Otherwise, we're going to probably conclude this webinar. So please go ahead and type if you have any questions. Sure, go ahead, shoot the question.
Okay, Devya, she asked, as per your slides, it is said that using Agile, we can add features on the go. That is correct, but the cost and the time remain same to complete the project. Again, it's the same. This is correct. As I said earlier, uh, it's the backlog. It is, yeah, it is, but you have to think agile. Remember when we talked about the backlog? You have certain number of features. You do not have to deliver each one of them. You have to deliver the most priority one. So you deliver according to your budget and the time that you have. And that's the idea. So basically, if you have $100,000 and you have 3 months worth of work, then you deliver a number of features that you plan it. If you did not have to finish, if you don't have time to finish all the features, then fine. Already you delivered the most important features. If the features has changed or have changed, or if their scope has changed, then again, we include the most important or the most prioritized one, and then we get rid of the low priority or the little value or no value features. So again, it's a value-driven methodology. I hope that answer. I know sometimes this is very strange. Actually, that's one of the sticky point normally traditional project managers struggle with. This is not what they're used to. That's why it's one of the very sticky points. I'm glad it's okay. So I hope I answered the questions. I think, yes, we can. Send an email, and if you send the email, we can send you back the slides. Sure. Any more questions, guys? Okay. Having said that, I think we come to conclude this webinar. Thank you very much. I hope you guys, I was able to add my 2 cents there, and I hope you guys got something out of it. And again, if you have any questions in the future, please do not hesitate. Email me. I think you have my email address, so go ahead and email me. And I thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Meirc.com